Hey everybody, I think we're on all systems go. For those that were eavesdropping and listening to me swear earlier, I'm working on a project. It'll be a house here that we ordered all new windows on and just got word we can't get windows till January. And you know, I ordered those in bloody November.
November?
Yeah, November 15th-ish.
Oh, wow.
And we got told today it'll be, sorry guys, it's January. I was like, no! I guess we're gonna have to look at opening our own window company too. Make our own windows in-house. We're gonna go there. Watch us.
Epic everything. Epic windows,
Yeah.
epic doors, epic this, epic that.
So Rochelle did not go through a lot of surgeries. This is Bailey, for those of you that may not have seen her before. Bailey is our
affiliate coordinator. So I work with all of our affiliate
Army
coordinators, sorry. So I work with all of our affiliate partners. So helping them learn how to best share our opportunities. And then from there, whenever they have leads that they bring in and people that they've connected with in their networks that are interested in investing with Epic, I have that phone call with them, the discovery session phone calls, as well as anyone who books in calls on our Facebook page or through our website or through wherever else you book in calls with us. They always get funneled into me, so I'll have those initial phone calls.
So don't call me, call her. So today we're going to talk about Saskatoon and a little bit about Saskatchewan. A lot of people ask us, especially, I'm sure you get this question a lot with being one of the first lines of entrance into this company. People ask all the time, why Saskatoon? What is the big deal? Well, it's not exactly all about Saskatoon. I'll give a little history and then I'll bring us up to why Saskatoon. A couple things there. With Saskatoon, one of the reasons that the programs we operate and offer work so well in Saskatoon is it's actually the market style that Saskatoon is in the moment, right? And Rochelle and I, it just happened to coincide that we are also from Saskatoon. So that is why we started with Saskatoon. It was our backyard, is our backyard. Here's the thing though, what's cool is there are other cities and countries for that matter, where our fund to flip and our hassle-free landlord program will actually work. So we're going to actually, we've already announced that we went to the Battlefords, North Battleford and Battleford, and are buying properties there because again, it's another market that fits the demographic of what we're looking for. And I'll go into more details about that. But I really will heavily dive into Saskatoon and Saskatchewan and give people a lot of ideas about really who we are and what we are, because a lot of investors ask, again, what is Saskatoon like? What is Saskatchewan like? And again, we are an anomaly. I mean, there is only roughly 1.2 million people in all of Saskatchewan on this massive land chunk. I cannot remember the actual square miles that Saskatchewan is, or square kilometers, whatever. But it's basically, it's a massive chunk of land. It's the equivalent of like 3 American states for any of our American followers. Like if you took North Dakota, South Dakota, and added Montana in there, that's about the same land mass as Saskatchewan.
A rectangle.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. I love our team. So we have 651,900 square kilometers. That's how big land, how much land is in Saskatchewan. Okay. So we won't be running out of room here anytime soon. So that's a big thing about Saskatchewan, is it's a whole lot of land and not a whole lot of people. Okay.
It's really fun trying to describe Saskatoon to people. And it's a fun fact about me and my background. I've actually lived in both Vancouver and in Toronto. So when I talk to these investors, trying to explain to them, say, this is what Saskatoon is comparable to this where you are, and this here, and so kind of people get that understanding, because it is a very unique place that I quite like.
For sure. And I mean, it is roughly 320,000 people with the whole, like if you take the 15-minute radius around Saskatoon and Saskatoon's core, it's still a good sized city at 320,000 people. So we'll break into some more of that. Oh, it sounds like Rochelle's here.
Someone's busting in.
And somebody's busting in. We are in the hood.
My time to shine.
Yeah. Uh-oh. So yeah, so that again is why we got started here. And we're going to break out more into the marketing of Saskatoon and why it fits our program so well. Yeah, but we'll do a quick change and bring in the substitute. Thank you, Bailey. Yeah. Yeah, there we go.
All right.
Oh, sorry. I did it again.
Yeah, I don't like the wet. Hey guys, sorry I'm running late.
So I just gave the history of how we started, like the fact that we were both from Saskatoon.
Yeah.
And then it's not that we just went with Saskatoon, it's just that it worked out well that the market here fits our programs. And I was saying there are other markets that this will work, but there are qualifications to that. And we were just about to kind of dive into more about Saskatoon and Saskatchewan and how that all fits together.
But the basis is we created the programs based on Saskatoon.
Yep. Yeah, this style of market.
Yeah, because some people are like, but why don't you flip houses there? Like, because it's a buyer's market. You can't flip houses at a rapid pace and make a really good spread because it just doesn't exist. Yes, there are unicorns. Yes, they happen every now and then, but it's just not common practice.
No.
Why don't you like legalize basement suites and sell those? Well, there's not an inventory or an appetite for people buying them. Doesn't make sense, right? So you have to customize it for your market, and that's what we did. We just doubled down and we were like, hey, let's do this with the market we're in and then find other markets to expand.
Ironically, in our market right now, with being the one buying the properties, I'm seeing a large amount of dual suiters hitting the market. A lot of landlords are just getting rid of properties. They just aren't interested in dealing with the whole scene, the COVID and all kinds of things. And I am noticing it's interesting. And for a while there was an entire neighborhood, Evergreen it's called, in Saskatoon, where basically every house in that neighborhood has a basement suite in it. And it was kind of trending. And then all of a sudden now with what's going on right now, people are like, I don't want to live with anybody. I want my own, thing. And so we're like, interesting. You can see that trending in the market. Like there's another suite, they're sitting, whereas they were flying off the shelf before, now they're sitting. And I was like, awesome. Good for us.
Yeah, great for us. Because again, when you have multiple suites, there's just more opportunity for cash flow. You're not dependent on just one stream. You've got.
Yeah. So again, back to kind of rolling back to what is Saskatoon and what does it kind of look like? So for those that have never looked at anything to do with Saskatoon, here I'll try and draw you a verbal picture that you can go and Google and those kinds of things. Saskatoon is basically a very large square mileage of coverage of land, because when they built Saskatoon, there's a running joke in Saskatchewan that you can watch your dog run away for 3 days because it's so flat here. And it is in a roundabout way, it's for a large portion of the province very true, okay? It's not all the province has to offer, which I'll break into, but in Saskatoon, it's divided by a beautiful river that divides the city into basically an east and a west chunk. Yes, there's a north and a south, but if you describe the city to people, it's two parts. It's an east and a west. Rochelle and I concentrate on the west side of Saskatoon, and there's reasons for that. That is the largest demographic of neighborhoods that are rental property appropriate, basically, meaning fewer homeowners want to live there, therefore more people rent in those areas, okay? So that's why we concentrate on that. If you take and look at price points, the minute you cross that river, the price points go up considerably. Like we can get a 3-bed, 2-bath house for $200,000 or less on the west side. You cross that river and you're $300,000 to $350,000 and up, and it'll be similar in square footage, that kind of thing. About the biggest difference, and not always, is the age of the property. But even there's some old neighborhoods and there's still some older houses there.
And it could be the exact same house.
Literally.
There's some areas that they were built the same time as our other areas we buy in. Same exact house, but it's going to be $100,000 more on the other side of town. Not to mention the increase in property taxes.
I was just going to head to that. And when you're looking at, here's where I feel, and I'm sure Rochelle will give her opinion here, but here's where a lot of landlords make a mistake. they get emotional about buying a rental property. It's got to be, I would live here. I would move there. Really? Actually, no. If that's what your portfolio is, great. But ultimately, you should be buying based on numbers. We focus a majority of our properties onto the west side because the numbers work. So here's the thing. You're going to go in at 200,000 for that 3-bed, 2-bath, 350,000 on the east side. Okay. We'll say it's a 900 square foot house, same rough kind of build, that kind of thing. You're going to get $1,500 a month rent on the west side, and you're going to get maybe $1,650 on the east side. But you paid an extra $150,000 for that house, plus your taxes are a third to 50 times, like half higher.
Generally, it's another $100 a month,
Yeah, above.
which wipes out that extra difference in cash flow.
So it
Rent.
The difference though, if Saskatoon was appreciating, the east side would definitely appreciate higher and faster than the west side would. Again, you've heard us say, we don't buy properties on appreciation, okay? Because Saskatoon right now is sitting at about less than 1% appreciation. It's very low right now. That's the way it is. So again, that's kind of just the demographic of the city. And here's the other thing that's really cool about Saskatoon and Saskatchewan, and then we'll go to our questions. But the big thing here is a lot of people, again, why is this such a stable city, that kind of thing? So number one, when you compare different provinces, so let's compare Ontario and Quebec to Saskatoon, 89% of Ontario, or 89% of Quebecers live in major suburban areas. In Ontario, it's 88%. In Saskatchewan, it's 49%. So again, our cities are very stable because they're rare. There isn't, that's a big thing. There isn't like a whole bunch of cities to pick from for people to bounce to and from, or to make massive change, right? There's 2 major cities in Saskatchewan, Regina and Saskatoon. Then you have your small cities. So both Saskatoon and Regina are within about 25,000 individuals of difference in size. It fluctuates because people will move back and forth. But here's a cool thing. Saskatoon is actually more of a labor or blue collar type manufacturing city, whereas Regina is more corporate and government job orientated. Again, it changes the dynamics of the housing and your neighborhoods when you look at those kinds of things. So, and then you have smaller cities like Prince Albert and Moose Jaw and the Battlefords that we're in. But our focus is Saskatoon. So again, really cool, diverse economy here as well, okay? We are probably one of the most underutilized provinces for GDP in all of Canada, okay? So we have everything here from, not only do we have the farms, the agriculture, which breaks out into, we have as much or more. Last time I looked, it's been quite a few years, but we actually have more cattle in Saskatchewan than Alberta. And that says a lot. We also have all your crops that you can imagine, everything from your lentil crops. We're actually one of the largest protein crop producers in the world. That's cool. There was actually, I cannot never remember the gentleman's name. He was out of Regina because it's a, gosh, forgive me, because my English is, it should be my first language, but I struggle daily. But anyways, there was an entrepreneur that won a world-renowned award for being able to distribute protein crops across the world in such an economical way. That's how important protein crops are. Again, a lot of people don't realize a lot of your Asian countries and those kinds of places, they don't eat meat like we do. And so they get protein from your lentils, your peas, all those kinds of things. And it makes a big difference. So again, we're huge producers of that. So it's a huge industry here. So there's your agriculture. Then we also have, a lot of people have heard of potash. Okay, so again, that's the fertilizers and all the things to make the soil in Saskatchewan huge and big. And so we have multiple mining companies that have huge offices in Saskatchewan. Okay, so you have, it's Nutrien now, and then there's KNS, and what the hell's the other one? Can't remember their name, but anyways, there's quite a few of them here. BP, E.P.I.C is the other one. So big industry here. And again, you can go look up potash, but the reason is it's the grade and quality that you can pull out of the ground here is hard to get anywhere else in the world. Again, okay. Then we go and we have lumber, we have diamonds, we have gold, we have copper, we have nickel, we have, you know, so these are all the product, and most of the stuff isn't even mined, like lots of it. Oh, and then health grade uranium. So that, like in a nutshell, is the mining kind of industry. And we also have the natural gas and wind turbine energy in this province, and hydro, as in like water produced electricity. So, I mean, it just goes and goes and goes, really. And so I find that really cool. So though, and the other thing that is really different between us and all the other provinces is none of these overpower the other one. There are 4 big areas in this province of economics, and they both are all 4 of them roughly run between 8 and 11% of the market share. And the rest is your services and those kinds of things, right? So when one area crashes, usually the other ones are still doing pretty good. And then that way we don't see the huge fluxes up and down that the other provinces do. So which is also why typically housing here will typically, we're in a bubble right now, a market bubble, because one of the reasons is our economy is still fairly decently strong, because not only that, Saskatoon is still manufacturing and shipping things everywhere. And because it got hard for a lot of things to be manufactured and brought in from other places, there were a lot of places here that stepped up and started manufacturing. So Saskatoon is also very good to pivot and adapt. Then we have the university, which is massive. It actually, before COVID hit, there were over 10,000 students that came from around the world to take school here. So again, you combine all of these things and you end up with a city that stays very stable and doesn't have massive appreciation very often, which makes for a great product for our hassle-free landlord program and our fund to flip.
Totally. So we have a comment. Chad says, "You two are amazing, doing amazing things for our city and province."
Oh, thank you very much. So yeah, that is with our hassle-free. We're actually in a house that will take you a tour on at the end here, kind of. That it's a little 2-bed, 1-bath in the west side, and it's been completely renovated, showing what we're doing to this neighborhood. This is a little thing that's happening in the back end. The city and I are actually working together for this specific neighborhood to try and figure out the assessments and the assessment process, because we're buying so many houses in this one neighborhood that the city's like, we don't even know how to assess it anymore, because you guys have come in and fixed up so many things and are repairing.
But here's an interesting fact is when they went through to do the city tax increases or the assessments for this year in Pleasant Hill, and this is where we have about a quarter of our inventory in Pleasant Hill, and this is the neighborhood that Alisa is talking about. It's the only neighborhood in Saskatoon where the taxes actually went down. So if that's not going to tell you that this area needs help badly, and so it's completely interesting, and we were like, we'll take it, right? Because it doesn't change the valuation on the property, it just makes the taxes cheaper. So we're like,
for now,
that's
gonna change.
But it was just, I thought that was so interesting when they said that. I was like, okay.
Yeah, no. And again, I know, like Rochelle, Saskatoon is a little, for her, it's a little slow. And I'm trying to be nice. So it doesn't move at a pace that, you know, when you look at larger cities, Vancouver, Toronto, their pace is a lot faster than what happens around here. But again, for our program, it works. So when we look at other cities that E.P.I.C is going to fall into, this is our roadmap. Saskatoon is our roadmap. We look for non-sexy, right? Like we will not, when we expand into the States, we aren't looking at California and Los Angeles or Florida and, you know, nothing, no Arizona. We're not looking for sexy.
No,
We're looking for like,
yeah.
you know, when you talk about there's certain states and you're like, I don't even know what city that state's in. Yeah, or where's the state? You know, that's where we're looking, because those are more typically going to be the ones that don't go up and down, up and down.
They're not swing markets.
No.
They're very predictable.
Yeah.
They just don't go to extreme highs, but they also don't go to extreme lows.
No.
And for us, we need consistency.
Yeah.
That's what we based our business on. So there's some people that are speculating on what's going to be happening in 2021 and, oh, with COVID and this and that and fear mongering and all that stuff. Well, at the end of the day, guys, even if people do start losing their houses, which could happen, right? Where are they going to live? I don't know. Do you think that maybe they need a place to rent?
Property,
Right.
hey, we'll service you, no problem.
So it's really interesting when people are like, I don't know, it's scary to be buying rental properties right now. I'm like, it's basic economics. It's supply and demand. So when all of a sudden homeowners are losing their houses and it's creating more renters in the market, and now there's less rental inventory, what happens? Rents go up, guys. Okay, like just basic economics. Some people are like, that's called speculation. And I'm like, or it's called forecasting based on the last 100 years of whatever of what's happened in real estate, right?
Absolutely.
But just going off of what's happened for eons before us.
Yeah.
That's all we're doing.
For sure. Hey, well, we'll see what kind of questions the team gave us. Just on a basic level, why Saskatoon? Was it part of because you live here, or
Yeah,
question?
we're done.
We covered that. Again, it was a combination, the history. We started here, but then it worked out well for us to create what we created. What benefits does being a landlord in Saskatoon have over other Canadian cities? Actually, quite a bit. So, two of your most tenant-friendly or landlord-friendly, still air quotes because it could still be better, like everything, provinces are actually Alberta and Saskatchewan. Meaning that when you go to a hearing, the process is more likely to move very quickly. If you have to have dealings with we call it the ORT. It is residential tenancies, but if you have to go deal with them, there's a chance, like you are actually being heard. It isn't just an automatic, you're a landlord, therefore you suck, right?
There's a caveat there though too,
Yeah.
because we've had certain people here where they're like, I had somebody screw me over, they were in my house for 6 months. I'm like, that's because you're a dumbass and don't know how to do your paperwork. That's a you problem, right? So again, as long as you know what you're doing, and you understand the processes, because there's still finite paperwork.
It's a government agency, people. If you are dealing with a government agency, if you think you're going to go in there with Post-its and make it work, good luck.
Or he said, she said.
Good luck. Good luck. It's not going to happen. Your paperwork and your processes must be spot on. And that is what we are very good at. Actually, our team is very good at. And that's why we have like basically a 98% eviction rate. And again, our province, I give them kudos because they've done a very good job. Even after we, for a brief period there, were shut down because they weren't doing evictions for a few months because of the whole COVID and trying to figure it all out. It's still only backlogged maybe an extra week or two. Literally within 5 weeks, we were still removing the people we needed to. So again, I do appreciate that. And that is the stuff we look at when we look at these programs being elsewhere, is how long are we looking at? I would never buy a rental property in Ontario based on that alone, because if it goes sideways, can you afford to cover that property for 8, 10 months, a year, right? Is that realistic for you? If it's not, I would be very careful about buying there, because we have heard it over and over and over. I can't even get a hearing date for 10 months. Then you still have to go through the hearing, don't know what direction it's going to go. And then I've heard it's even more months to get the sheriff involved.
Yeah. And it comes down to, if you are going to be in those markets, you just have to have other backup plans. That whole cash for keys, pay people to go away, relocate them. You just have to get creative and figure out what works in your market.
Yeah.
Again, luckily here, it's not something we have to worry about.
Yeah. Absolutely. And again, but we did that by design when we created the programs we did. How does the Saskatoon real estate market fare compared to larger Canadian cities? You want it or you want me to carry on?
Yeah, you deal with more real estate.
Okay, so when it comes to, again, houses, we are kind of unique buyers. Number one, we're not really buying starter homes per se. We're buying either, sometimes they might be a tag unique, meaning distressed, meaning that the way it was built, it may not, like the homeowner's just not really interested. It'll still rent, right? So we're kind of geared more towards that kind of housing. And then also obviously anything that is specifically just for renting, okay? So when you compare housing markets across major cities and us, typically what everybody's analyzing is starter homes, okay? So we're not actually buying starter homes. Our starter home price in Saskatoon is still very high. I haven't looked for a little while, but I believe the last time I looked, it was still like 338,000. For a starter home, which is still a pretty good size chunk of change for buying a starter home. Again, compared to Toronto, that's a garage, right? Like I get that, okay? It's also why we don't do these programs there. Again, it goes back to the math. It's you're going to typically make money in Toronto buying multiple units. You're not going to make money buying a single family home. So our product that we need wouldn't work, or our programs that we work with won't work in Toronto or in Vancouver because we are typically buying single family homes, right? So again, that's the big difference between the markets is the price points. It does not make sense to buy a $500,000 or a $600,000 or a $700,000 house, single family home, and rent it because the rents are the rents. Now you and Bailey travel a lot more than I do. But when you talk to people, what are the rent numbers you've kind of seen in Toronto or Vancouver?
It depends on the property, but if you buy a $700,000 house, on the high side, it's renting for $4,500 a month. Again, depends on the property. I get that, but I'm just saying, like, it's not even like 0.5% rural.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't make. There's no way the numbers work. And then when I ask people, okay, what are you cash flowing? And they're like, oh, $200 a month. Guaranteed, they have a huge down payment on that property.
Yeah.
That's the only way they're getting any cash flow is because they're sitting on so much equity in the property. Why? Because that's the only way it could cash flow. And I'm like, guys, this is broken. If you look at our numbers, you could come buy 2-3 properties with us and have 4, 5, 7 times the amount of cash flow off of that. The numbers just don't make sense.
Yeah.
But then they're like, well, I'm in it for the appreciation. Okay, if you're into gambling, you do you, right? We're looking for people who are really logical, who are like, the math makes sense to me. I like this. I like knowing exactly what I'm going to make year after year. I like not having no rent come in or, a repair bill come in for something or any of those unexpected costs. That's works really well with us. And again, if people are like, I just want to do this and stay in the market for 30 years, that's my golden goose, have at her. That's not our play. Again, we want money in our pockets now so we can compound it, right?
Yeah. So again, and the big cities too, they have their lower end neighborhoods, but the type of people you're dealing with in those neighborhoods compared to what we're dealing with here are night and day different. Yeah. We joke all the time about we buy in the hood or whatever, right? Which is basically, it's our way of saying we're buying in a rental neighborhood, right? And honestly, I mean, Rochelle and I have, and all of our team go to all these properties at all hours and do all kinds of things, and nobody feels unsafe, right? Again, obviously you have to be smart anywhere you go, but it's not like, we're very blessed in Canada. We don't have to deal with the gun issues that most places do and that kind of thing. So again, that makes a big difference and also allows us to buy in the rental neighborhood. And again, when we go into other cities, that is another area or thing we look at. I would not be interested in buying in a low income neighborhood in Toronto or Vancouver because the people you're going to be dealing with there are going to be much harsher than the people we're dealing with.
Yeah, for sure. And then also in the States, this is why we're not going with Section 8 tenants, which is what our basically our welfare social services tenants are in Canada here. And so some people have said, well, why not? Well, because exactly that, the gun rules. I don't want to have to go collect rent or send one of my team members to go collect rent and feel unsafe. I would never ask any of our team members to do something that I would not myself do. And that's been our morals and integrity the whole time.
Yep.
I'm not saying that it's not like it's, people do it, that's fine. That's them, that's their MO, but that's not our play. So for us, we were looking for markets where the houses still meet the 1% rule, but had class B tenants, like not, obviously working super professionals and whatever, but just working class people who can afford to pay rent and they're not necessarily having to be on subsidies at all. So.
And we kind of actually, for us, that we always try to reflect on things that are happening. And one of the positives that we pulled out of COVID is it proved who will work through basically an apocalypse: Timmy workers, Walmart workers, Costco workers, most of those areas, that healthcare, right? So those are the people that in the States that we would want to rent to, because we know they're going to be working and they're going to pay their rent, right? So, it's for us in a roundabout way. When we picked, or Rochelle picked the cities and we looked at things, it was for us, it is one of the blessings that's come out of this, because we're like, damn, look at how that city is. Nothing's changed. Their economy is still this.
Nothing's changed except for the housing prices went up a bit because the demand for the rental properties increased.
Yeah.
So we've got, again, the wholesalers and realtors are like, God, inventory, when are we going? When are we going? I'm like, almost there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, cool. And this kind of ties into the next question of how E.P.I.C Alliance self-sustained ecosystem makes best use of the Saskatoon real estate market. 100%. So for us, because we go in and we find distressed properties, or we find properties owned by distressed owners, we're able to go in and get really great priced inventory and properties. Then again, whether we do a big renovation or a light renovation is dependent on the property and the project itself, but then we turn it into a cash flowing revenue property. Now, if somebody wanted to go and do this in a really hot market, the numbers wouldn't probably make sense, because generally, if you're going to be flipping, the renovation you're going to have to do on that property, because if it's a hot market, people are buying it. So now it's causing the supply and demand issue where you're going to be paying too much for the property. So your margins are only so much. And then if you keep it as a cash flowing rental property, if you don't refinance it out, you're going to have too much money sitting there. It's not going to make financial sense. And so for us, and this is why in a lot of other markets, the BRRRR is so hot, because you can basically refinance to pull your initial or most of your initial capital out of it. So it's not just sitting there, so you can wash, rinse, repeat and do it on the next one, right? So for us, that's essentially what we've done, is we're basically BRRRRing, but we're doing it working with our investors, and we don't have to qualify for any of the financing. So for us, with Fund to Flip, we have the investors who are on title for the asset. They're using their cash or underperforming invested funds, home equity line of credits, whatever. They're making their good returns, which is generally what their financial goals are. And then for us, we're able to renovate that property, create more new cash flowing inventory for our hassle-free landlord owners. And then from there, we sell the property to them, and we get to go into a new sort of partnership where we still have control of the property. So some people are like, well, if you flip everything out, you're not keeping everything. Well, it's kind of the best of both worlds, because we get a flip profit when we're flipping the properties in between. So we get paid up front. That's when we keep the lights on and pay everybody for our team, and all that kind of overhead and all that. And so then that's that part. But then we're also building long-term wealth, because generally when our hassle-free landlord owners take the cash flow for their 15% return, then we are keeping the equity portion, which we get at the end of the deal. So again, every single month that we're paying rent to the hassle-free landlord owner, they're paying down the mortgage. About half of it goes to interest, and about half of it goes towards the principal pay down, which in most cases is what we're tied in for. So we look at it like our hassle-free landlord houses are just little piggy banks, where we know every single month that equity is being built up. And at some point, we're going to be getting it. So again, whether it be 2 years, whether it be 20, we're in it for the long haul, so it doesn't matter to us. Now, what is so ironic, and this is what I absolutely love, is at some point, the Saskatoon market will go up. It will, because it might take 50 years, but it will. And so for us, if we're controlling, or we have control of all these different properties, well, what happens when the market goes up? People are going to want to start flipping, homeowners are gonna wanna start buying or upgrading or switching things up. And then all of a sudden, when they can't find any inventory, and all of a sudden we're like, you know, little birdie might have told somebody that we have thousands of properties that you could potentially come and choose from, you know, that's where things are really gonna change and really gonna shift.
Yeah.
So again, could be 10 years, could be 50, we don't care.
Yeah. And that's the other thing, I think a lot of people, that is one of the few ways that you can get yourself in trouble with real estate, is that you're selling at the wrong time, or you're forced to sell at the wrong time.
Yeah.
It's something to keep, excuse me, keep hugely in mind. The only way you, not the only way, but the biggest way you typically lose money in residential real estate is you're selling when you shouldn't be selling. Again, if you bought it right, that still shouldn't matter. But honestly, if you're selling and you overpaid for a property and you're still trying to get that same price point, which I do see, you know, the people that bought them in 2009 or kind of trickle into that 10, 11, even a hair into 13. And then they're like, well, I want what I paid for it. It's not happening right now because the market dropped. And it's that, you know, depending on the area, it's anywhere between 7 to 15%, right? And so, you know, they are either having to keep it longer or they're having to sell it for less than they paid for it, right? So again, that is how you can get yourself into trouble. You're paying too much for it because, you know, we went to a 0 vacancy here. So everybody and their dog thought, oh my God, I'll become a landlord. I'll buy a rental property because it's 0 vacancy here. I don't have to do anything except buy. Yeah. And so everybody bought a rental property, like everybody and their dog. And we're seeing that now. Now they're pulling out and trying to sell. It's that 7 to 11 year mark. They're like, I can't do this anymore. I'm 7-year tired, and they want out. And it's like, great, no problem. I'll buy your house, but here's what I'm paying for it. And they're like, I'm not selling it for that. No problem. I sit there and wait because nobody else is going to buy it. So yeah. So again, something to really keep in mind when you're buying a rental property.
Yeah, because even if you were in a position where you were not cash flowing, say that you bought wrong and you had to reduce your prices by, or your rent prices by $200 a month. So now you're negative $200 a month, but you can still afford to keep paying it, right? If you're able to weather out that storm and then, you know, you're still getting your equity pay down. And if you're not forced to sell because you don't need that principal that you had in your property, you can just ride that season. It's, you know, it might take 2 years, it might take 10, depending on your market, but you know, at some point you're going to be in a break even or better. But some people don't have that luxury because of life events, or just because maybe they bought too many properties, and each of their properties, if they're minus 200 times 10, they might not be able to sustain that for very long, right? Again, one bad tenant could wipe out a $20,000, you know, repair bill or reconstruction on a property. So if you don't have that nest egg to be able to go in and renovate properties, like it could go downhill really quick.
Absolutely. And again, we tell people all the time, your most dangerous position isn't when you have hundreds of properties, because it's mathematical. Then you can handle certain amounts of properties that where we end up with a tenant that trashes a house, compared to when you have 1 or 2 or 3.
And generally, if people are having 1, 2, or 3 properties, they're usually still working full time. And now at the end of the day, when all of a sudden your work life flares up, and then maybe your home life flares up, and then you have a tenant issue, which one of those is easiest to let go? Generally, it's going to be the tenant, right? So again, some people come to us and they're like, what are you going to give me for it? Just take it. I don't want it anymore. And then Alisa gives them the number and they're like, wait, but I'm going to lose 20 grand. That's a problem.
That's right. We aren't a charity. We are a business. And we have to be able to buy these houses at a specific price point in order for our investors to be paid well and to, like Rochelle says, keep the lights on. So it's the whole economics of it.
And it's up to them to accept the offer.
Yeah.
If it doesn't make sense, don't do it. But we have had some where we know people wrote big checks to sell that property.
Yeah. Yeah. I've worked out this year alone. I think I've worked out 4 short sales. What that is where, long story short, but basically a seller goes to their bank and says, I'm not gonna be able to get what I owe for this property. The bank agrees to work out, say that extra 20 or 30,000 they owe on this property, however that looks between them and the bank, and then they will allow them to sell the property below what it was owed on it. So yeah, and that's just the nature of the beast right now, because so many people bought too high, and then now they're in a position where they may have to sell. So should we be asking why Saskatchewan instead of why Saskatoon? Is it provincial or city laws that are more important to running E.P.I.C successfully? Could it work in Regina or Prince Albert? Why or why not? So the laws for when it comes to the Tenancy Act is basically, I believe it's provincial, it's province-wide. So that doesn't change anything. Honestly, the few things that are the kind of what we've looked at and under all our variables, that we'll take Regina as an example, why we don't have an interest in going into Regina, is actually the houses themselves. It's a known fact that Regina is built on large plots of clay land, and clay soil tends to expand. And I'm not talking like this, literally it can be 6, 8, 10, 2 feet, okay? 10 inches, 2 feet, okay? What happens there is the city is still in the mindset that they think they need to build basements. So all these houses have basements, and there are literally neighborhoods in Regina where the basements are failing. The houses literally are, you can literally go house to house on that block where the walls have literally been pushed in because the ground moves as much as it does, and then it recedes in the wrong kind of water. You get dry years and the clay recedes, you get wet years and it's like a sponge, right? So we have no interest in going there because the cost, it doesn't make sense to live somewhere or own a cash flowing asset that you know every 10 years that basement's going to fail. It does not make economical sense. So we really don't have an interest in going there at this time, and whatever we'll see in the future, but right now it's not an interest of ours. There's enough other places for us to go buy houses that we don't need to tackle that. So it's not so much the laws that stop us from going to another city in Saskatchewan. We're literally looking at how the houses are constructed in Saskatchewan. So but again, that's why we stuck with Saskatoon. There are houses here that are 100 years old and they are completely functionable. There's nothing wrong with them. They will be standing here another 80 years beyond that. So again, that's the big difference in why not Saskatchewan. But it will be Saskatchewan in time, because as we go into more cities and we get more product from elsewhere, that's what will be happening. All right, why not run the programs with properties in British Columbia, Ontario, and Quebec, where most of our investors are, which we touched on that. What about Alberta or Manitoba? So again, there's nothing saying at some point we may or may not look at other provinces. Right now, the key though is there's enough inventory in Saskatchewan. We don't need to, right? If we had a blessing problem where all of a sudden 20,000 investors came and wanted to invest with us, and we looked at our inventory and went, you know what? Yeah, we need to open it, then that's exactly what we will do. Yeah. But right now, we don't need to. We have at least 5 other cities that in Saskatchewan we can move into. I'm talking about in Canada, right? The States will be a completely different platform.
Yeah, 100%. We'll be opening up more cities faster in the States because we're going to be outsourcing everything there. That's what's going to be so different. So we don't want to saturate just one market, because we don't want to rely on just one set of or one team of person or whatever.
Yeah.
We'll have, 2 by 2 like our model is, but we'll have to be really strategic with what that looks like, whether we open up in one city and we get 25 houses, and then we jump over to the next city, get 25 houses and keep going that way, then regroup, or whether we just go in and get 50 and then, another 50, cap out that market. Like, it will just play it by ear.
Yeah.
But once we get launch here, it's going to happen pretty quick. And then Bailey and I will be down there full time, probably by like January, February sometime. And then that's when things are really going to pick up when we actually get down there. We're going to start slow remotely. we'll go from there.
Yeah.
We're gonna run out of time soon. We got like
Oh,
10 minutes left. So does anybody have any more questions at all or anything? Okay. And if you have any, get them in there. And then also, I just want to give a quick shout out to about our 25 days of Christmas. So if for those of you who might not have heard, that's our new announcement. So we wanted to do something fun for the holidays. So we decided that for every single person who purchases or puts a hassle-free landlord house under contract between the 1st of December, which is yesterday, and the 25th of December, they will be getting their name entered into a draw for $2,500 cash. So yeah, we thought 25, yeah, let's do it. And so we are going to hopefully have a new house go under contract every single day. So it'll be kind of the E.P.I.C Alliance advent calendar. So stay tuned to our social media for that. We're going to be announcing which house goes under contract. And yeah, we've been having people reaching out. So people must be liking this promo because we've got lots of people heading over to the mortgage broker. So if you're interested in finding out more, reach out to myself or Bailey. Alisa does not really deal with that side of business, but you can ask her questions too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and but
I'm
yeah.
still gonna just send you to Rochelle or Bailey.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. And so at the end of the day, if we are going to be having a little prize for everybody who puts us on their contract too. Those we don't know about yet, but yeah. Do you want to do a quick tour? Or?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Do we want to do our epic hour quick here?
Okay.
Yeah.
Mark your calendars. Get your calendars out. Next week's epic hour is going to be
Thursday, December 10th.
at 11 a.m. Saskatchewan time, 9 a.m. Pacific, and 12 p.m. Eastern. And we're going to be talking about
Construction tips and tricks, which is actually a great timing because we just have a flip to the public under construction right now. So we'll be able to talk about that side of some of the tricks that we have for our area, to Airbnb construction tips and tricks to rental properties. So it'll be pretty cool.
awesome.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll do the tour.
Okay.
So this little gem is a 2-bed, 1-bath. Oops, sorry. Little 2-bed, 1-bath. So as you can see over here is kind of the doors and windows. Turn away, all of you. Hide. But anyways, we just basically took, and we did redo this entire house. Like we took this down to the stud. Just a really good sized bedroom for the 2-bed, 1-bath. And that kind of thing. And this here, we took out some of the walls, just opened it so that it has that kind of more modern feel. Again, the kitchen, we have an amazing guy. It's awesome. And rolls them in and out very quickly. And from there, you can see nothing is fancy. But it'll rent forever, and we're very clean lines, just clean everything. We don't do fancy. We just do functional. So again, it'll be hard to know because very simplistic, but it does the trick. When you go back here, we just did a nice, this will be the laundry, and it's just a back entrance. Bedroom for this property. You can also see, I talk a lot about fences. You can see, ironically, all the fences you see that have been built are all E.P.I.C properties. So you can see how we're slowly changing the demographics of the neighborhood. And it's and then I can't remember for sure, but I think this one, no, it was always a 2. This literally redesigned and moved out and made things actually have a proper space. And again, just incorporate the hallways into the bedrooms and everything. And then the basement. Honestly, the basements, we don't typically do anything with them. They are just cleaned up and made functionable so that it's just basically a mechanical room, and that's it. So you can see it's pretty straightforward, old school little house that we find tons and tons of them in Saskatchewan. Great product that will rent forever and make lots of tenants happy and make lots of investors money. So yeah, that's the tier. So Alisa and Rochelle there is Michael's behind me, I think. Yeah.
We got 5 minutes still.
We still got 5 minutes. Okay.
All right, so I'm just wondering if we missed anything here, but yes, why Saskatoon? We talked about the 25 HLP and 25 days promo, which is super fun. And then
You know what else about Saskatoon is interesting is the people themselves. That's an area that Rochelle and I are very good at dropping into a different city or location and figuring out how the people flow and who they are and how they work and their mindset, because that is super critical and important if you're going to invest in real estate in a specific area. Because you may go, prime example here in Saskatoon, when the boom hit, there were a bunch of builders that came through and they were going to build $1 million house. They did, and nobody bought them. And they were like, what is wrong? Why is nobody here buying $1 million
yeah,
house?
the numbers, like the stats say that we should be selling, 50 of these a year, blah, 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 blah.
Nobody wanted them because to the people that live here, a $500,000 house was super expensive. And no one went and researched that before they came in and built. We literally were getting phone calls from people out of Toronto going, oh my God, we have this builder that's called us and he has these houses and he only wants, what, it was ridiculous.
Like $300,000 below the ARV. And I was like, that ARV is mess, man. I was like, run away. It just did not make sense.
No, and really, as long as you're okay with holding them for the next 15 years, then you'll be okay. And they're like, no. And we're like, no, you need to run away.
Yeah, so just because the numbers, look decent on paper, you need to know the market. You need to know what's happening there. You need to know who's buying and what your backup plan is. Because for us, we always have a plan A, B, and C. Again, if we were running things as Airbnbs, worst case scenario, if Airbnbs got pulled, we turn them into cash flowing revenue properties. Would we leave them furnished? Would we not? That point in time, who cares, right? So for us, we always have backup plans, but sometimes when people are like, no, this is what's going to happen, and then all of a sudden it doesn't, or condos, for example, lots of people bought condos and then now you can't even give them away. So you want to talk about a loss, and then it's one of those things, do you take a 10 grand loss now, or do you take a 50K loss? Actually, we had, and this is not in Saskatchewan, but we had a friend who had a property in Alberta somewhere, and she was going to take, I think it was a 5 to 10K loss if she sold it. And I said, you just get out of it. Like, it's just been a headache for you. Like, just get out of it. Turns out that she didn't. And they actually, last time I talked to her, had condemned the building and they were worth nothing. Like literally nothing. And her bank could pull a mortgage on her. So it was a big, like, you just have to know what you're doing, guys. Like, people are like, oh, it's just real estate, I can do this and whatever. And I'm like, you always need to make sure that you're covering your T's and dotting your I's, because there's a lot out of your control. And so, just make sure, again, those backup plans are always in there.
Yeah. And there we have it.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for joining us, and sorry for being late. And we will try to catch you on the next one next Thursday, December 10th. So in the meantime, stay epic.